Tell me though, if you can, what is Industry 4.0 in a nutshell?
Right, well, in a way it's simple, in a way it's complicated. It's complicated because nowadays everybody calls this stuff Industry 4, but if you go back to the core, it's that everything in the factory is digitally connected. And people might wonder why that's not already the case, but because the people know now that you can control your air conditioning or your heat pump at home from an app on your phone. So in our everyday life, there's a lot of digital connection. In factories, you have very sophisticated pieces of machinery and they're still standalone. They're not connected to anything other than power supply. So getting all of these machines and everything connected, digitally connected, that's Industry 4.
So why are you enthusiastic about Industry 4.0?
Well, personally, I mean, my role is to help as best as I can manufacturers do a better job. And I got into this in 2016 because I still got connections back to Germany, which is where most of it came from. And I just saw there are opportunities to help manufacturers do a better job. And it was hard slog at the beginning, but now people have really taken to it and are implementing of it. And Kiwis being Kiwis also, they don't say, oh, we haven't got $5 million to buy the perfect solution. From one of the vendors, we tried and set up quite smart systems with a fraction of that cost. So basically, there are three aspects to it. One is access to real-time data. So when everything's connected, you actually know in real time what's happening on the shop floor in the factory. And people might think, well, does that make a big difference? It makes a huge difference. Because we've had one manager of a factory who had that connectivity, and all of a sudden he could be in Auckland and look at his phone, and he knew what was happening in the factory. And that gave him a lot of comfort or the ability to intervene if something had gone wrong. So it's access to real-time data. You understand if there's a problem in your factory, is it machine downtime, is it bottlenecks, is it something else? So it's almost a transparent operation in your factory. The second one is that it allows you to plan, and it makes planning a lot easier. So oftentimes in a factory, what you see is that the supply of raw materials, either into the factory or within the factory, there stops, and then the machine stops, and there's waste of time. If you can see, if the people who organize the supply can see the rate at which their raw materials are consumed at a machine, they know, all right, this guy's running out out of bolts in 10 minutes time, I better get some new bolts to him and things like that. And the third one is for quality control. So the traditional approach, especially in assembly, is you put all the things together in assembly on a machine and then you test it at the end of the line, and if it's not working, then you have a problem. What we can do with connectivity is we can check each of the components before it goes into the machine, so we don't even put a faulty component into the machine. That makes quality control and quality assurance a lot easier. So that's just some of the advantages of digital connectivity.
That's fantastic. So for New Zealand and the benefit for New Zealand, what do you see there?
From a country perspective, but that also applies to the individual manufacturers, most of the guys I deal with export most of all of what they do. And if they don't export, they often compete with importers from a very competent manufacturing operation overseas. So I always talk about globally competitive companies. And the race is getting harder all the time. New manufacturing places spring up and they increasingly do a good job, so they become stronger competitors. So we need to reduce waste and cost, and we need to improve productivity all the time. And Industry 4, if it's done well, is just a great tool to improve productivity. So there is a benefit for the country, and there's a benefit through the benefit for the individual employer, there's a benefit for the country, but there's also a benefit for individual workers because their jobs become more interesting and often some of the tedious stuff disappears.
So that sounds like a benefit for them, whereas I do hear some people afraid that they might lose their jobs because of Industry 4. What would you say about that?
Well, the first thing I'd say is if I were working in a company that's not looking at applying all the tools they have to improve productivity, I'd be worried about my job. because those are the companies that will eventually fall behind in the competitive race. But the other thing is, we see that internationally, companies that adopt the technology, they're smart companies usually, and they're doing well, and they're always short of good workers, so they just deploy their workers somewhere else. So there's clearly no connection between redundancies and the introduction of digital technologies. And I've visited a number of factories where we've always asked that question, and they always point us, these guys are now working in a different part, they've got a better job. I mean, it's not Industry 4, but it's more an Industry 3 example, but it's very pertinent in New Zealand. When Systema brought in a lot of automation in what they make, there was a lot of concern about a lot of workers losing their job. What happened is that nobody lost their job. The company is thriving, and people have got more interesting jobs because a lot of the tedious manual operations are now done by machines. And the other thing I see is that most people hate waste, and especially they hate their work being wasted. So if you go to work, you don't want to stand around and wait for something else. You want things to go so that you're doing a good job at the end of the day.
Yeah, most people like to go to work and be effective and productive.
Exactly,
so
exactly.
It does feel good. Yeah. Are there any other final words or bits that we might have missed?
No, it's just, it's an encouragement to both employers and workers to have a go at it and not be deterred. I mean, there's always people with interest in selling you big packages saying, oh, yeah, it's not that easy and you need to spend $1 million. But the great thing about Kiwis is they give it a go. And I've seen some great applications for where you'd say, if you buy that off the shelf, it may be $300,000. That did it for 70 and it works perfectly well. So give it a go.
Give it a go, get into it.
Yeah.
Nice. I think that might be us.
Yeah.
Hit stop.
Right.